remember 3 years ago when Scotland had an independence referendum?
If it's a no vote by a whisker, again, is that it? Do you come back for another referendum in a few years' time? I mean, you've talked in the past about it being for a generation. Is that still your view?
Yes, it is.
The SNP have always said that in our view these kind of referendums are once in a generation events.
Once in a generation opportunity. Once in a generation opportunity.
This is a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Take this once in a generation, once in a lifetime opportunity. Once in a generation thing.
Once in a lifetime opportunity.
No, 139,788.
That is it. Scotland has voted no. The result in Fife has taken the no campaign over the line, and the official result is a no.
Well, I guess that's that settled then.
Last year we were elected with the highest share of the constituency vote won by any party in the history of devolution on a manifesto that said this: the Scottish Parliament should have the right to hold another referendum if there is a significant and material change in the circumstances that prevailed in 2014, such as Scotland being taken out of the EU against our will. These conditions have, of course, now been met. So I can confirm today that next week I will seek the authority of the Scottish Parliament to agree with the UK Government the details of a Section 30 order.
Yes, this is the shock revelation that the Scottish National Party want independence for Scotland. Stay tuned for a groundbreaking report on what bears get up to in the woods. Spoiler alert, it's not making porridge and chasing Goldilocks. So, Nicola Sturgeon is seeking a Section 30 or blah blah blah, layman's terms. The Scottish Parliament is going to put through a vote to push for a second referendum on Scottish independence, colloquially known as IndyRef2. Now, before I go any further, let me just say that this might be all very interesting to me, but I'm not always going to be able to put it in layman's terms, and I will be saying stuff like this. To sift through the data produced by the National Records Office for Scotland and establish a good estimate of when the number of ineligible voters from last time but eligible in IndyRef2 would exceed this number. Genuinely, that's coming on. Don't say I didn't warn you. However, the power to call a referendum does not actually reside in Scotland, which means that Nicola Sturgeon has to go south of the border with her begging bowl and go, "Please sir, can I have some more?" And Theresa May will say, well, we'll get to that, but that's not actually relevant to the central point of this video, and you will already know what that is if you've seen the title. Now, this video is not going to be either for or against independence. If the referendum actually goes ahead, there will be plenty time for me to make videos on which way I'm voting and why. But this video will be independence neutral. With good reason, because you might think that those who want independence want IndyRef2 and those who don't want independence are against IndyRef2. But this is Scotland we're talking about. It's not that simple. Are you ready for this? In the blue corner we have yes voters who are so determined to get independence they'll take any chance we get. We also have yes voters who think that there is a strong case for IndyRef2 on its merits. We also have undecided voters who think that objectively we should have IndyRef2. We also have no voters who are against independence, but they still think that there is an objective case for IndyRef2, and we also have no voters that are against independence but want to have a referendum because they think they will win that and that will kill independence stone dead for a good number of years. In the red corner we have pretty much the polar opposites of everything I just said in the blue corner. So you've got no voters who are so dead set against independence they don't want an IndyRef2 even if we should have one. There are no voters who don't think there is an objective case for IndyRef2. We have undecided voters who are either apathetic to the notion of IndyRef2 or they don't think there's a case for it. We have yes voters who don't think there is a case for IndyRef2, and there are yes voters who want independence but are scared that if we have IndyRef2 too quickly then we'll lose it and kill independence stone dead for a good number of years. Now, In terms of whether I want IndyRef2, I honestly couldn't tell you which of those categories I fall into, so I think I'm neutral enough to make this video. But you might be wondering, didn't they just have a referendum 2.5 years ago? Why would they have another one now? Well, first of all, welcome to Scottish politics, you must be new here. But also, the current theory is that if this goes ahead, it will be held in late 2018. Now, remember that, because it will be important later. And if there's one thing we know about the general electorate, they never change their minds in 4 years. How often do we have a general election again? Isn't it every 4 or 5 years? Now, another criticism of IndyRef2 is that we're apathetic to the whole idea, that we're all referendumed out. And I think there is an element of truth in this, certainly, but on balance, I've been able to vote for just over a decade now, and I can't remember the last calendar year in which I didn't have to vote on something. I mean, I could work it out, but where's the fun in that?
Shut up and get to the point!
Well, I can't do both, Bender, but okay. Before IndyRef1, the nationalists had been sticking to their once-in-a-generation line, which means that afterwards they'd need a really good excuse to hold another referendum so quickly, because you just know that they're going to be held to that promise they made before the referendum, and we'll get to that. But what they started talking about post-referendum one was a material change of circumstances, which sounds a bit ambiguous, doesn't it? So it's no surprise that during a leaders' debate in the run-up to the Scottish Government elections of 2016, Nicola Sturgeon is pressed for an answer on exactly what she means by that. And guess what she says? You know what would really help? Is if we had a clip of that. Oh, really? The file size is too large? Not we couldn't be bothered tracking down the clip? Okay, well what she says is, for example, if Scotland was to vote to remain in the European Union, but the UK voted to leave. Now, who's to say whether that circumstance actually took place or not? You know what would really help? Is if I had made a video on this a few months ago. I did? Well, that's alright then. So, the nationalists were asked for a specific example, they gave it, it happened. Now, personally, I feel that a number of people voted no in IndyRef1 because they weren't sure of what the implications of Scotland's place in Europe would be if they voted yes, and at that time, Remain were favourites to win the Brexit vote. That in itself would be a case for IndyRef2 because people voted under false pretences. But the problem with that is it's very difficult to prove because you can't get data on that. But here's the kicker. The Scottish National Party put in their manifesto for the 2016 elections that if Scotland voted to remain but the UK voted to leave the EU, they would ask for a second independence referendum. So they are just doing what they promised. Now, they don't have an overall majority in the Scottish Parliament, but the Greens have promised their support, which means it will go ahead, and then the question will get passed down south. So the Scottish Parliament will definitely do it, but there's still the question mark over whether the UK government will green light it, and they might not, because it might all come back to this point.
If it's a no vote by a whisker, again, is that it? Do you come back for another referendum in a few years' time? I mean, you've talked in the past about it being for a generation. Is that still your view?
Yes, it is.
Here's the thing. That's not much less ambiguous than material change of circumstances, because how do you define a generation? Staunch unionists will probably try and tell you it's something like every 30 years, and there is one bit of data that backs that up. That's actually the average age for a Scottish woman to become a mother for the first time, which will probably come as a surprise to the people of Glasgow who know grannies that age. But 16 seems to be a more likely age, because that is the age that you can legally vote in Scotland and legally get pregnant. Although, obviously not at the same time, that would be weird. And pretty impressive, but 16 years on from IndyRef1, you have a whole new generation of voters that maybe weren't even born when IndyRef1 happened. So it seems strange to make it any longer than that. But it leads on to an alternative interpretation of generation based on this question. How long would it take for there to be enough people that were ineligible to vote last time to overturn the result? In other words, how long would it take for the Yes campaign, mathematically speaking, to be able to win without anyone changing their minds? Statistically, you're ignoring the people that were no but would vote yes a second time round because they had their chance. Well, in order to know that, you would have to know how many votes the No campaign won by. You also have to assume that turnout was the same, because otherwise that could skew your data. However, turnout in IndyRef1 was pretty high, so I think we're okay on that front. Here's the tricky part. You then have to find somebody that is willing to give up copious amounts of their spare time to sift through the data produced by the National Records Office for Scotland and establish a good estimate of when the number of ineligible voters from last time, but eligible in IndyRef2, would exceed this number. And who do we know that's sad enough to do that? Yeah, that's part of my life that I won't get back. But I have an answer for you, and that answer is 2018, which is when they're thinking of holding it anyway. I told you to remember that number, didn't I? Now, if you don't believe me, by all means check my answer. I'll leave a link to the National Records Office of Scotland, and if you're as sad as me, you can do that calculation for yourself. Of course, I should point out, the only reason that the answer comes out as 2018, it comes out as that soon, is because the No campaign won by such a small margin. If they had won by a bigger margin in the first place, we wouldn't be having this discussion. So, should Scotland have IndyRef2? On balance, I would have to say yes. Well, I guess my job is done here. Wait, what? We need some content to play for the end screen. I've got roll the outtakes. Now here's the tricky part. You then have to find somebody that is sad enough to sift through the data produced by the National Records Office of Scotland to establish a good estimate of... Thank you, helicopter. Here's the tricky part. You then have to find somebody that is sad enough to give up lots of their spare time to sift through the data produced by the National Records Office of Scotland to come up... For God's sake! Just had one fly past. Now here's the tricky part. You then have to find somebody that is sad enough to give up copious amounts of their spare time to sift through the data produced by the National Records Office of Scotland to find when the number of people who were ineligible to vote last time but eligible to vote this time. Come on! Go, get past them, go! Stop ruining my videos! As if I'm not doing that myself.